Hello, and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today. We have invited back Jim Osugi back to A Better World to talk about his technology, the Kiko Technology, which is having a wonderful reverberating effect across the planet because of the way it's cleaning up large bodies of water. It's so interesting. It actually has many different types of applications, and Jim will speak to us about those. Now, Jim Osugi is a former NASA scientist who worked on the Apollo mission. He's a physicist, and he brings physics to the forefront where it really needs to be, he and I agree, so that we can utilize its intelligence, which he has done through his invention. And he'll be speaking about how it works using the world of frequency. And many people in many different walks of life understand that the world consists of vibration, of frequency, and Jim has come across a way of using the hydrogen frequency in particular that makes a resounding difference to the health and well-being of our water systems, which is essentially us. So it's really a pleasure to have Jim back on the show today to talk about what he's doing across the world. Jim Osugi, welcome back to A Better World. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Mitchell, and thank you everybody that's listening to this podcast.
Now,
Please.
I'll tell you, I want to just mention one other thing, and Jim will expand upon this. We have talked extensively, Jim and me, and his team here in the United States and elsewhere, about this is not just a technology. This represents a paradigm shift in the way we approach dealing with the issues of water, with contamination, pollution, and the like. So, Jim's going to lay this out for us right now because it's very valuable for us to understand this distinction with everything that has gone before. So, Jim, if you would please pick up on that particular point and expand on it for our audience.
Thank you very much, Mitchell. Yes, the theme today will be the paradigm shift using hydrogen frequency and how it activates beneficial microbes, which actually do the work, or what I call the cleanup of impaired, whether it's soil, water, scale, even oil contamination, is that if you can influence the hydrogen frequency at the atomic level or the molecular level, surprisingly things happen with living organisms. So instead of taking a chemical approach, most of them being toxics like pesticides, insecticides, copper sulfates, aquathol K that you use in fertilizers, strong fertilizers with an excess amount of burning capabilities like excessive phosphates and nitrates. They kill not
Glyphosate.
only the targeted organisms, but also the good organisms. And what do you have? A negative effect. And this is one of the reasons why in the USA market, you have something like 55 to 60% of all waterways are severely impaired. That's a phenomenal number. And
It's
the
scary,
crisis is
Jim.
not only economic, it's scary from a public health point of view. So that's the introduction to the paradigm shift. But I think you should step back a little bit and see what the credentials of the Kiko, not only myself as the founder, but I'm surrounded by a number of research assistants here, colleagues that I've known for 30 to 40 years, who also have a background either in biology, living organisms, frequency, hydrogen, energy. So my background started when I was with NASA on the Apollo Man to the Moon program. And I was very fortunate to work with some brilliant scientists, and we were able to develop a co-patent in the use of hydrogen oxygen propulsion system. So with that little bit of a background, it took about 25, 30 years to trigger the same mathematical formularies and apply it to both oil and water. So
Oil
that's
and
the
water.
background.
So it can be used in oil contexts as well, where there's a paraffin buildup or fracking, which adversely affects the water, of course.
That's correct. And then the other factor is that besides the industrial and commercial applications, I studied for 5 years acupuncture
Ah,
in the human body. And that again gave me the yin yang effect. The yin yang, I think people understand that.
Oh, indeed.
Have one with industrial physical parameters versus the physical parameters inside the human body, which is the traditional Chinese medicine.
So
So
now I
combining the two
understand.
here gives you a very good comprehensive basis of our theme here that there should be, and there is an ongoing paradigm shift where more and more end users are shifting over to a hydrogen frequency strategy at the sacrifice of toxic chemicals. It's not really a sacrifice. They're just
Oh, it's not a
overrated.
sacrifice at all. It's an upgrade. And now I understand the way you think more because you know that I'm an acupuncturist as well. I believe you know that.
Yes,
So
yes.
I said to you just before our show began today that what you're doing with the Kiko is exactly in line with the Chinese energetic purview. You know, Chinese medicine is about balance, yin yang, you mentioned, of course, and accommodating. It's not the kill paradigm, the homicide paradigm, you could call it. It's not about chemicals killing, it's about energy accommodating and balancing in a phrase. And that's what you're doing, of course, with Kiko.
That's correct. That's a very good way of putting the human energy versus in sync with the physical energy. Physical energy, I think everybody knows this as well. Where does it come from? It comes from the sun.
Uh huh.
And the sun, we call it light or heat. Well, in basic physics terms, it's a frequency. And what are these frequencies? And are they commercially available? Well, let's start with the most dangerous one, gamma rays. I don't think you want to be exposed to gamma rays, otherwise, boop, kind of disappear.
Right.
However, going
All
down the line,
frequencies are not equal.
that's right. Going down the line, you have ultraviolet. Well, ultraviolet, if exposed too long, is very dangerous. However, there's a commercial application for ultraviolet, isn't there?
Sure.
The other one is infrared. Infrared is 3 different bands. Kiko operates in the safest infrared band, the far infrared. But infrared, as you know, can be used for magnetic resonance, CAT scans.
That's right.
You have a
Or
surgery.
sauna baths. I sit in a far infrared sauna virtually every day.
That's correct here. But I was looking at the equipment side of it. So well accepted. Infrared cameras, the little red dot.
That's
It's
right.
used in satellite navigation. You've got also microwaves. Microwaves are commercially available in the consumer home as heating of foods. It's also used in the cell towers where we make communications. So Kiko actually,
Although that
well,
has a dangerous edge to it as well, you know that.
they do, where it has to be controlled and monitored, correct? So
Go ahead.
Kiko also is based out of or made out of volcanic material, which I source out of Japan. That people are saying, well, volcanic material, how can you make a frequency out of volcanic material? Well, let me reverse that question to you, where the paradigm shift starts occurring. What's a silicon chip made out of?
Sand.
Sand. You mean bloody sand can carry a communication signal? Well, it's been done for almost 100 years now.
Yeah.
And my brother is one of the early pioneers in the usage of semiconductor chips for satellite monitoring. So that's what they call satellite navigation, as well as my other brother here,
Wow.
where they linked up satellites. So why can't far infrared
What a
through a
family, Jim. What a family.
exactly innocuous pellet called the Kiko pellet, or it's actually made out of basaltic material, which is volcanic material, and going through a proprietary heating process, you can actually change the recipient of that energy. The recipient being oil, it could be soil, it's obviously water, and also for human health here.
Yes.
And that's where the paradigm shift comes in, is that this frequency is based on the far infrared frequency stimulated by the hydrogen atoms. The microbes go to work. good microbes, living organisms, and through a process that nature knows best, we have wonderful results and almost probably 12 years of research and applied physics. We have over 400 success stories, well over 400 success stories in 23 countries. And we can delve into these case studies here as we move along here. But I wanted to stress
Yeah.
you need to understand the paradigm shift, and it's
Well,
not startling, it's
it's
nature
so
at work.
absolutely. No, I totally appreciate that. And I think many of our viewers will too, that we're not looking to kill, destroy. That's not the mission. The mission is to activate what you're saying is natural's, nature's real blueprint in water and activating it. And it has the microbes inherent in there. But when the energy of the water is low, those microbes don't come out to play. But with the presence of the Kiko, and please correct me if I'm not hitting the nail on the head here, with the presence of the Kiko, and sometimes with an addition of enzymes, those microbes get activated and they start doing their job of cleaning up the water, which is another way of saying restoring it to its natural, clean, structured, and coherent state.
Well, if a microbe can listen and talk back here, they would be fully agreement with what you just said here, Mitchell. Come on,
At
microbes,
least
wake
someone
up,
agrees
listen up,
with me.
talk back to us.
The microbes agree.
The
Hallelujah.
microbes agree.
All right, good. No, this is helpful. Now, would you just, before we go into some of the applications, Jim, which are very exciting, and you've really hit the ball out of the park with this around the world, as you were saying, 23 countries. I'd love to understand a little bit more of the hydrogen frequency and the way that interacts. How is that the part and parcel of the Kiko technology?
That's a very good question. Let me break down the hydrogen frequency into several smaller bite sizes here.
Great.
Okay, so let's look at water, which is the hydrogen frequency is two parts hydrogen, right? HO, oxygen, and H, another H molecule here, HOH or H2O. In hydrocarbons, it's basically H and C for the primary components. H for hydrogen, C for carbon, correct? And that's prevalent in all oil, water, and soil applications here. So what the Kiko technology is if we can break or accelerate, either break or accelerate the hydrogen, either the atom or the bond, that's where the paradigm shift occurs here. So again, AB. So you've got a hydrogen frequency, and we've done work with the University of California, Riverside, who's actually taken computer monitoring, and all things in this universe vibrate because we're under the influence of the sun. The sun has all these frequencies I just mentioned: gamma ray, X rays, ultraviolet, infrared, far infrared. Visible light is also a frequency. That's the only frequency one can see. All the others are in the ether. You
They're in
don't
the
know what they
field.
are. You can't feel it. You can't hold it, but you are holding and using devices that use that
Correct.
frequency. So one of the factors of the paradigm shift is very, very few people have actually studied the influence on the accelerated frequency of the hydrogen atom. Those in the semiconductor industry have done a fabulous job of doing that. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why the semiconductor industry communication is smaller chip-wise, but infinitely faster.
Interesting.
Go back in the 1960s and 70s, the chips were this big, single layer. Today, on the size of my thumb, I've got, what is it now? Gigabytes, whatever bytes it is. It's
Exactly.
a lot of bytes. And we
Yeah.
can communicate, we can talk like this. You're in New York, I'm here, I'm speaking, and within the
He's
speed
in
of,
Macau, folks.
oh, sorry, Macau,
Across the
we're
world.
talking to each other, right?
Like we were sitting in my living room.
Well, yeah, well, let me look around. Maybe you are. Anyway, The hydrogen frequency, and it's again well researched in the semiconductor industry, but in the application of water and oil remediation, very few people have done it. But I've got to give credit to the research institutes like, say, Kelly. They've done a great job on researching hydrogen frequency. There are people like Tom Moser from MIT who's looked at frequency as well here. Uh, there's Professor Bellandine, who I'd like to mention their name because they're vital people here that
Yes.
I've not necessarily worked with them, but I've studied their research reports and then basically mirrored the technology, which is a carrier, to what the research was and see if it match fits. If it match fits, then you've got a paradigm shift here. And so the frequency that Kiko pellets, they're just basaltic or volcanic pellets, about 3/8 of an inch in diameter. You don't need something very big like the semiconductor chip. You don't need a 2-inch by 2-inch chip anymore, do you?
It's miniature at this
It's
point.
miniature, right? And the same thing applies for the Kiko pellets. And that hydrogen frequency, and I'll just throw a number out at you. It's well over 200 million times faster than a nanosecond. So people go, oh, what's a nanosecond?
Oh my
Bloody fast. Well,
God.
how about 200 million times faster than that? That's the beauty of nature here is you can accelerate the hydrogen in the water at a rate of 200 million times faster than a nanosecond.
So let me ask you something, Jim. The way that the frequency from the Kiko is interfacing with pollution, contamination, uh, fracked water, uh, oil spills, um, microplastics. Is it, in a sense, if I could use the phrase, vibrating out, precipitating out those contaminants from the water, in a sense, expelling them from the water when the water's life force becomes of a certain level? Those contaminants can no longer remain and survive in the water. That's
That's
one
a
way of putting it.
that's a good question here. And it's a challenging question here. And the challenge is like this. First of all, you have to look at conventional treatment of how they're trying to repair and restore fracking water or oil spills. How do you restore plastics and microplastics in water or in soil, correct? And if you look at that as
Well, how to get rid of them? How to get
how do you
rid of
get
them?
rid of them? Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the conventional thought is we made our best effort, but if you look at it from a physics point of view, it's been a failure.
Yeah.
So now the paradigm shift, again, remember our topic's paradigm shift is what other alternative technologies are available? Well, instead of using, let's say, a conventional toxic chemical, maybe you can use like plasma injection technology, burn the hell out of it. Okay. But again, that may have some consequences in terms of cost, economics, energy costs, correct?
Yes.
So there are technologies like plasma injection that will get rid of plastics in water here. But again, the cost is probably going to be in the trillions of dollars to resolve the problem. So you may have a technology that's effective, but from a cost perspective, it's out of the ballpark,
It's
correct?
untenable. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So then, if you look at another physics point of view, if you look at the hydrogen frequency, what I just talked about here, is that enough to set up a motion within the hydrogen carbon? Remember, most things in soil and water are minerals. They are minerals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think on the atomic chart, there's something like 120, 123 different minerals. And if you subject it to the hydrogen frequency of this 200 million times a fast nanosecond, the minerals also start vibrating.
Mm-hmm.
And what that triggers is, and this is where advanced research has come into play, what impact does that have on the true workers to get rid of PFAS, to absorb hydrocarbon spills, to repair algae blooms in impaired lakes, to repair filamentous cyanobacteria, invasive weeds, okay? And there, the bees that go to work are actually called beneficial microbes. And so there's a direct relationship between hydrogen frequency and beneficial microbes to repair the work. And that's where the case studies come in. To prove it, I spent over 12 years, over 300 studies before the patent was finally registered with WIPO in November 2018. That was a long time, but again, I had to make sure that no matter what application, that the hydrogen through water, oil, or soil had to be 100% effective. Otherwise, you don't have a proven technology. Fortunately, over 300 studies were conducted as part of the patent process.
That's
That kind of answer your question there?
Yes, you really did. I really appreciate it. There's one other technical point I'd like you to cover, and then let's have the fun and pleasure of jumping into the water, so to speak, about the effects that the Kiko technology has had on water in places like Iowa, like Florida, like Texas for the United States, and I know all over Asia, where you've been spending so much time in the last many years. You've had effects on rice fields in Vietnam. I really look forward to hearing about the effect of Kiko, but I want to understand something, deconstruct one point you made to me some time ago, which is this idea of the sun and the far infrared frequency creating a perennial battery. Could you speak to that?
Yes. Let me clarify what Mitchell said here in more simplistic form here. The Kiko pellets are made of volcanic material. They go through a heating process, and it's actually the energy can be retained indefinitely. That energy is a frequency from the sun. It's not visible light. It's not gamma ray. It's not ultraviolet. It's within the infrared band, of which there are three: small, intermediate, and the far infrared. I work in the far infrared space here. And because this infrared comes from the sun and you have the hydrogen frequency vibrating 200 million times faster than nanoseconds, you basically have an infinite source of energy that's being absorbed either by the oil, soil, or water. And that's what I mean by infinite energy. And if you equate that to a battery, the layman's going to say, well, you almost have an infinite charge, like a battery, that can be applied to water. So, but it actually has to link up with the sun, the frequency of hydrogen, as well as a particular frequency that's emitted called far infrared, which, by the way, in our opinion, is the safest energy among the non-visible ones here. The human one, which is the red, green, and blue, okay, let's put that to a side. All the ones that are not visible, I believe the most safest one is far infrared. And as Mitchell said, he sits in a steam bath. He sits in a sauna bath. You can stay there for quite a while, huh?
And it gets down to the level of the bone, the marrow, which is what makes it so effective.
Well,
And the
that's the beauty
far
part.
infrared frequency can penetrate that deeply.
That's right. It has a very high absorption rate. The absorption, you see it in your tissues, your muscles, you feel better here. But actually, where is it really absorbed into? The water.
Yeah,
And what's the body made out of?
water. So that highlights a very important point that I make all the time and you make all the time, which is that while we focus largely and not in this interview, we are focusing on external bodies of water. We are a body of water ourselves. And so there's a fractal relationship, of course, between what Kiko will do inside us as it will do outside of us, as within, so
There are
without.
stimulants outside Kiko, and the one I studied for 5 years is acupuncture. You've got a
Right.
little needle, very fine, stimulates it, and it certainly doesn't stimulate the nerve. Otherwise, you'd be jumping up like little Frankenstein.
But the
You know,
life force, that's the
uh,
thing that evades most people that aren't familiar with this kind of terminology or or concept. of life force, of chi. And that's really at the end of the day, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about here. The life force of the water is getting activated and re-stimulated through the Kiko frequency, the hydrogen frequency.
Well, here's the beauty of it. Okay, you may say, well, how do you know that? Give me the proof of it.
Well,
And you
that
said,
gets us into the results that you have seen across the world.
back both. But I also take it to another degree here.
Okay.
Let's look at it mathematically. Physics and math are pretty much they're yin yang. They have to be interrelated. So most of my work, I eventually equated to some kind of mathematical, not necessarily an equation, but it's more of a mathematical principle here. Acupuncture, you stimulated the chi. Well, every human being's got 365 acupuncture points in the body, the primary ones.
The primary 12 meridians.
Well,
Yeah.
what's the difference between that and the mathematical model? Well, how many days in a calendar year?
365 and a quarter.
365. Well, actually, every fourth year, leap year, there's an extra one, 366, huh? In the human body, it's the same thing, with 365 primary acupuncture points,
That's
the
right.
meridians, and then one mystery point that gives you the 366. And according to ancient philosophy, I wasn't born then, but the ancient philosophy is that's why people are unique. Is that extra point makes it unique.
Interesting. A special little DNA
Yeah.
node.
But you look at the DNA, we all have same number of chromosomes, don't we?
Right.
And
And
they're
look at
matched.
how different we are, right? Look
But we
how
are different, aren't we?
very, very, very. So
Okay.
talk to me a little bit about the results you've seen. Let's start with agriculture, soil, farming, regenerative, organic, biodynamic, what have you. What is
Very
the
good.
effect of Kiko on the soil, on the water in the soil?
Right. Again, remember, the hydrogen frequency is a common thread to all these applications, right? The hydrogen.
I think I have
Hydrogen
to have some water, Jim. Excuse me.
HOAs. Go ahead. I hope there's Kiko in it. Let me see that.
There is.
There is.
I drink
So
it all the time.
the common thread is uh, we started off with agriculture with seed germination. So I figured, well, let's look at the human health. If you have strong babies, hopefully they grow up into strong teenagers, stronger adults, sensible adults, and as they age, sensible, right? Not no
Yeah,
good people, but sensible ones.
we hope.
And they grow up to be good, strong characters in our society here. Well, seeds are the same way, and seeds are like humans. Not every seed from the same mother are identical, but the Kiko will actually increase their yield. So we started with that research. We did work with the food fiber people in Australia, very good scientists, microbiologists. They were amazed because they're using external forces, external treatments to increase seed germination, mainly called induced biologicals. And they would get some performance, or they would change their fertilizer mix to get it. But with Kiko, with the water, hydrogen, we were getting 2 to 3 times better germination effects here. So I said, voila, I'm
Does
onto
that mean
something.
they're germinating faster or larger?
More of it. Instead of being dormant, more of it.
Oh, okay.
So
Fuller.
most seeds, the natural seeds are 50% male, 50% female. Most seeds,
Okay.
unless it's GMO modified, correct? Well, what's the human population in terms of male, female? Roughly 50-50,
Roughly, yeah.
plus or minus, percentage point here. But let's talk generics here, 50-50. Well, with Kiko here, first thing we noticed was we took some original seeds. So that 50% female went up to about 77, 91%, depending on what the seed was. So we started off with rice because that's easy to monitor. And lots of research in that area here. Undeniable, the hydrogen frequency increased the seed germination, the plants grew more, there were more grains per stalk, we're getting anywhere from 15 to 35% more grain. But here's the best part, the soil health improved.
Uh-huh.
didn't need as much fertilizer, correct? The other factor was less diseases, significantly less diseases. So you can see
Huge,
the link between
huge.
just yield, productivity, but soil health improved. And not only soil health improved, the microbes were obviously at work to prevent diseases. Then we started doing citrus, what people call citrus greening. We did this with sugarcane. Started off sugarcane in the Philippines. They would have cane borers. Within one cycle, cane borers disappeared. Maybe they went to the rivers that they like.
Now, what are those?
Cane borers is a parasite that eats up
Okay.
the sugar content in a sugar cane. In Morocco, the areas where we'd be going next, UAE. I hope there's audience there. Kuwait, Egypt, is they have a big problem with black scorching, which is actually a fungus or a parasite or bacteria. We don't care what it is, it's a disease.
Mm-hmm.
And they start robbing the sugar content out of these dates here. And the economic benefit or disaster is they'll lose 10, 20, 30, 40% of their crop. And black scorching is a severe problem. And so this whole idea of agriculture is not just more productivity, more yield. The monitoring is less damage by pesticides, healthier plants, stronger soils,
Healthy
or if
soil.
you have a repeating cycle where a plant creates its own seeds for the next generation, you'll have a stronger next generation. So so you can see doing some of these studies, it took me 5 to 7 years in some of these areas here to put all these facts together. I can say it in 6 minutes,
Yes.
but
But it took you 7 years,
7 years to come
massive
up with a
data
6 minute
and
presentation. So,
experience.
right. And then from there, we moved on to cotton fields. Okay, what's the biggest area of cotton fields? Well, you want it white and you want the fiber stronger. The hydrogen frequency in the microbes achieved that. All we were was the stimulant, correct?
So interesting.
It's just one factor or another. So you got fruits, fruit orchards. We've had mango trees dormant in the Philippines for 5 years. We put it through inadvertently. We just threw Kiko pellets, you know, like a kilometer away from these mango trees. Mango groves are dormant for 5 years. I come back 5 months later. I've never seen so many white flowers on a tree before. What happened? Well, at the time, that was probably my best answer, scratching my head. But I had an inkling already. Hydrogen frequency and the microbes go to work here, right? And then you bring it to the scientists, and they're scientists from a microbiology point of view, and they're flabbergasted, is because their schooling is based on looking everything to a peephole through a microscope. Whereas physics, we don't look at just the mic through a peephole, through a microscope. We broaden our view and we equate it to what's happening in the sun, the earth, rotation,
You're
heat,
looking at an entire ecosystem.
look at the entire system here, and then you can make a judgment call. Okay, yes,
We've
is the
lost
benefit.
most of your face, by the way.
What's that?
We've lost most of there you're coming back into focus. Okay.
Oh, so I'm falling asleep.
Your
No.
camera is waning.
Oh, I think the camera
There we
moved.
go.
I think it's
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
Maybe
Gravity, the power of gravity. Talk about physics.
I
Okay.
moved it.
So
Maybe.
you're getting these extraordinary results with the soil health, with seed germination, with crop yield, all of with disease reduction, if not elimination. This
That's
is
right.
extraordinary.
That's just agriculture. So you can see a big shift here.
Yeah,
And resistance is, and I should talk about resistance because we have the technical, we have the data, we have facts. You know, when you do 350 studies, the common thread repeats itself here. Like I
surely.
said,
You
in the
see
mind.
patterns repeating
The
themselves.
resistance is the incumbents who don't want to lose their business. They think they lose their business. Fertilizer companies, as an example, pesticide companies. They
Right.
actually they don't need to lose their business. What they should do is incorporate the product into their formulary, and they can use less, right? and have a wider market coverage
Exactly.
instead of conducting more and more research. Well, this camera's really moved. Sorry about that.
That's
Uh,
okay. That's okay.
uh,
I'd
I
like to
don't know.
move on uh from agriculture, which is so impressive, to looking at different things such as scale and pipe. And I'd like to look at the waste treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants.
Yes,
Because again, you've had some exceptional effect there too. So could you describe first, let's start with scale, because what I said at the beginning was that the applications for Kiko are many, from soil all the way to pipe in a building and a chiller.
that's
So,
very good. Right. So I got carried away about agriculture because that's dear to our
oh
heart.
no, it's great.
In
It's
this
great.
California Valley, where the Japanese immigrants are very strong
Right
growers
where
of
you grew
strawberries and
up.
lettuce.
Yeah.
Grew up in the farming community. But anyway, scale, we started that in Macau, Hong Kong, and particularly in the city of Vancouver. And again, scale is just nothing more than minerals that bind together here. Again, it's the
Right. Calcium
precipitation
carbonate.
of minerals, mainly calcium, magnesium, with some type of, let's say, oxide, and they scale and form inside pipe. And as a result of it, you got to spend millions of dollars with chemicals, acid cleaning, labor costs, repair time, downtime. That costs millions of dollars.
Of
Well,
course. Of
if you can
course.
get rid of the scale through hydrogen frequency,
See if you
you'll
can
say,
play with your camera a little bit again. I'm sorry
yeah,
to
this,
interrupt you.
sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
But keep talking. Keep
keep
talking.
talking. Okay.
So interesting. So again, you're dealing with the interface of the hydrogen frequency with
Yeah,
mineralization.
the same principle occurs here. It's hydrogen frequency.
So you're breaking a bond in a sense. If you were to distill it, again, no pun intended, down, what you're talking about is the disruption of certain bonds that create adhesion.
That's basically what it is. So you have an HOH, correct, with a calcium bond or magnesium bond, which is the scale part of it. If you can accelerate the hydrogen part, the calcium and magnesium break away from the HOH. Then you have no scale.
Awesome.
We've proven that relentlessly in Vancouver, the UK, with hotels, factories, chillers, HVAC. HVAC is heating, ventilation. We have a number of pivots in agriculture where they scale up here. These problems just are gone, either in weeks or in months. Feed nozzles for chicken farms, they drink water through a nozzle, caged birds. And if there's water is dry, they peck on the plastic nozzles. Uh, and diseases as a result of it because of the plastic injection. If you can get rid of that, get rid of the scale, you get rid of all these secondary problems here.
So
So that's
repeat
another
that
one. And
about
what,
the chicken context or hog
yeah,
matter.
yeah, the in the chicken context, there's two types. There's the broilers that are used for consumption, and then you have the hens layer eggs, the eggs for consumption, correct?
Yes.
We did a lot of work with good clients, mainly in Europe, where because the water frequency is relatively low or the frequency, low frequency increase the bacteria content in the water, the eggshells were thinner, in which case they would start breaking. This is what they call seconds in the industry. So you have some with 1 million hens in a barn, and some of the seconds were 11%, 16% of the eggs were being broken or
Oh, I
undersized.
see.
With the Kiko water, again, through the hydrogen and the microbial activity here, that 11 to 16% is now consistently down to about 5 to 6% seconds. And every 1% is $1 million. So you can do the math.
Wow.
And the shells are thicker. The eggs are the eggs are more uniform in size. So you don't have to go meticulously small, medium, large eggs anymore, huh? They're much
They're
more
all
uniform.
large.
So
And
it saves
is it
labor costs.
affecting the quality of the nutrition of the egg as well?
Definitely has.
How so?
All you do is do a protein count. Protein count, that's it. And
Isn't
in the
that something?
broilers, the same thing happens here is that they would, the broilers are under controlled environment. Feed them, they're little birds. You feed them until they come up to, let's say, 2 kilos of weight, in that neighborhood here, X amount of feed, and then you bring them to the processing. Well, with Kiko here, they could save anywhere from 3% to maybe even 4 or 5% feed. And when you're spending millions of dollars a month on feed, 3 or 4% may not seem much to the layman, but if you're in the industry, that's a phenomenal
It's
change
huge.
here.
It's huge. What about the use of chicken or hog dung for making energy? What would be the application of Kiko to that context?
Good question here. Go back to Asia. We've
I'd
been
love
converting
to.
we've been converting animal dung, whether it's cattle or poultry, goats, sheep,
Hmm.
into either fire material, right? They're organic material for fire, or you let it ferment on the sun and use them as compost. So if you go back to the 1800 period, 1920, 1930, prior to the use of synthetic fertilizers like nitrogen, the soil was your fertilizer, and the stuff that you poo on it, the animal waste, if you can ferment it, and it's easy to ferment just under the sun, you have
Hmm.
great compost. And animals like this, we can't use so much human waste for compost. The reason is humans eat Haagen-Dazs, McDonald's, who knows what kind of crap. Whereas the animals are on a very
Yes.
controlled fed diet,
Organic.
barn,
But what is
grass.
the effect that Kiko would have on the quality of the dung to produce a higher quality of energy output when converted?
Doing it already. Recently, Dave Sybesma, my partner in Iowa, he's been working with a group out of Nova Scotia who started to put Kiko in the mineral water conditioner. Again, minerals, it's just a adjunct to the Kiko pellets, just accelerates the microbial activity. And we took pasture grass in Nova Scotia, treated it, did 4 cuts of it, both in the irrigated land as well as in the marshlands. And the protein count went from like 6, 7% up to 12%, 14%, 17%, and 20% after 4 cuts here. Okay, so the protein count, very visible, very easy to test here. But here's the beauty of it. The proof was not so much the data, the proof was our eyesights here. You know the cattle after when they use hay as their nutrients, their food, they would only eat those bales of hay that were Kiko treated. They would not touch the untreated ones here until they're too hungry, and then they went to it. And that's where we see the paradigm shift. You don't
Empirical
need
evidence.
data after data after data after data here. Use your eyes. And we've seen this with cattle, poultry, eggs, you name it, diseases in trees. And we see this with impaired waterways, which is the next major application.
Yes.
You have algae blooms, you put it in 6 hours later, 2 days later, 3 days later, 2 months later, it's gone. And it stays gone for years. Is that data or is that observation through your eyes? Well, the microbiologists,
Both.
the officials, they just want data, data, data. Well, that's one thing here. Well, create your own data. Use the product, monitor it, because you have very good scientists. Utilize your strengths. We have a strength. Put it together here. Don't resist what we're trying to do here because you don't understand hydrogen or frequency or how microbials work, correct? That should not be a hurdle, a regulatory hurdle. Unfortunately, the US is a very strong regulatory hurdle.
Tell us
Whereas
about
outside the
Spirit Lake.
US, people are a little bit more receptive to using advanced technologies.
Tell us about Spirit Lake. I understand your point, and it's a very good one. And it's just the crazy world in which we live, where results are not as important as certain groups getting funding. But you have such empirical evidence and objective data both. Tell us about Spirit Lake.
Yeah, Spirit Lake is just one of many applications here for impaired lakes here. So actually, I started actually with much smaller ones in Asia, 1 acre, 3 acres with waste, sorry, impaired waters from golf courses, and monitor for 7, 8 years, see if there's any outbreaks. I did my water quality testing. The water quality testing doesn't say much. It's either algae bloom, either you have it or you don't have it, huh? And so we did this in the Philippines, rice fields. Oh, they're still super clear for 8, 9 years here. And then after COVID, I says, well, let's start addressing the impaired lakes in America because they're 55%. So I'm sure the DNR, the EPA, the state officials, they would be very receptive to seeing advanced technology that would, I would say compete, but it would be an alternative to the current conventional chemical treatments. So we actually started with the IBM facility in California, very receptive private facility. Then we did Crab Cove that runs between Oakland and San Francisco Bay. It got cleaned up in a matter of days. Again, the proof was the wildlife, the geese that would never touch that water. When I come back a month later, they're all drinking from that water, which they weren't touching for the last 8, 9 years.
Wow.
And then in the meantime, we had a private slough at Spirit Lake. Sandbar Slough is privately owned, so we wouldn't violate the law at the time. Treated it, and within 3 days, that algae bloom, and it was more than algae bloom. It was not only green, some of it was purple, which is hydrogen sulfide. Uh, were arrested, cleaned. Beavers were returning, muskrats were returning here. So again, observation is to the wildlife coming back. And the only reason why wildlife come back is there must be food.
Right. So I tell
No
people all the
food, there's
time,
no wildlife.
Jim, that what the Kiko technology is doing is it's restoring an entire ecosystem,
That's correct.
flora
That's the
and the
point.
fauna,
That's the point. The fauna return.
inside and around any body of water.
That's
And as
right.
you say, the geese come back and the swans come back and they want to be in healthy, clean water. And if the water isn't that way, they basically take off.
That's right here. So
Typically.
unfortunately, our legislation is based on data on chemical analysis, pH, TS, total hardness. But animals don't give a damn about this.
They
They
can
want clean
tell
water. They
cleanliness
want clean
and
water.
health
And that should
and
be our major
oxygen.
data point. That should be our
Yeah.
major data point, the return of wildlife. We've seen bald eagles now, incredible number. White swans, a beautiful white swans. And here's the best part. They're laying eggs there in these muskrat mounds.
It's
We've never
amazing.
seen the last 20 years. And we're
Incredible.
still being challenged or ignored. I think the wise guys, smart guys, I should say, they don't challenge us. They know we're correct.
Right. Right.
But they tend to ignore us for some unknown godly reason here. But
Exactly.
one of these days, they will wake up.
Exactly. Let's move on to two more applications and then we'll be done for this particular podcast, which is would you please speak to the application of the Kiko technology for wastewater treatment and then in the oil context, which is so big a problem
Right.
regarding the paraffin buildup. And I
That's
know
right.
that that's still hypothetical, but it seems to align with the same principles as the removal of scale and any mineralization. So,
These are both very challenging. Let's address the wastewater and we can address the hydrocarbon.
sure,
Uh, and let's look at the hydrocarbon. That's a little bit easier. Again, it's hydrogen carbon for the most part. And then when you process it into plastics here, and that's where it gets very challenging, is because it's a very strong bond, like PFAS. Again, use the same principle of hydrogen, break the bond in the oil, and oil also has a small amount of moisture, whether it's 0.1 or 2% moisture. It's a very small amount, or you add moisture to it, create the hydrogen frequency, and the microbes go to work again. Correct? So we cleaned up oil spills in these farmlands in Asia, farmlands in Iowa. Also, an oil spill many years ago in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, Gulf of Mexico at the time. So that one's pretty easy. But again, it's the resistance, not so much resistance, it's the education that I wish we can find somebody in the oil industry or government entities says, hey, this is a big problem. We can reuse the land here by having it clean here. So maybe through this podcast, somebody listens to this and says, hey, let's call Mitchell, let's call Jim and find out a little bit more about it. And we're starting to do this in the Middle East. They're curious. They
Yes,
have a
yes.
problem. We have just a lead in Colombia here, or sorry, Trinidad, just this morning. Same thing. He's curious. Hopefully, curiosity leads to a pilot to a cleanup. So that's not all that difficult to do here. It's the wastewater can be cleaned up relatively easily if it was in a contained environment,
Like
like
a
a
tank
pond, a river.
or
But if
tank
it keeps flowing in
water.
and out, in and out, in and out, huh? So as you clean up a bit, it's moved on, a new set of influence have come in. So the wastewater is a real challenge, but you can have a significant reduction, and we've done this with the city of Sebring in Florida. Small facility, it's a septic tank waste, comes into a circular, I think it was like 40 feet diameter. We put our Kiko pellets in there, a little bit of mineral water conditioner, and the biological demand decreased, and the sludge content for every time it comes in, it's coming in constantly, right? So if you take a snapshot of it, it's about a 20-25% reduction of sludge. But if it was stationary for, let's say, a week or 2 weeks, you'll probably have 50-80% reduction of sludge.
I see, right. We
But
experienced
that's
that a little bit
in
in
and out, right?
Danbury,
That's
Connecticut,
right.
if you
That's right.
recall, with REA recovery in an attempt to
Right.
treat that water
That's right.
for taking the fat, oil, and grease fog
Right.
and
That's
converting it into biodiesel.
Now there's a
But it
lot of
wasn't,
pressure now. Right. There's a lot of pressure now from governments. I've been working with one of our fellows here, Andy Kim in Oregon, and he's a good young fellow here. And the stakeholders that own land here, they're a little bit sick and tired of all these nitrates in their soil. They're not getting good crop growth anymore.
yes,
And
yeah,
so one of the departments says, okay, we're going to fine the polluters $20 to $30 for every nitrate that we measure, which is a lot of money.
yeah,
So there's a penalty involved now, finally. Whether it gets enforced or not, let's see what happens. Up in Michigan, an automobile parts supplier here, I can't release their name because of confidentiality reasons, but they want to reduce their waste that goes into a holding tank. Again, it comes in and out, in and out, in and out. But if they see any reduction to a limit that the state has imposed, it's a very low ppm number, which is going to be hard to achieve unless you put in our Kiko technology. They're very receptive. And then we've got a group out of North Carolina. They have red and yellow dyes. Again, you don't want the red and yellow dye to contaminate the land, do you? So again, the penalty is, can it be cleaned up here? Again, these are complex applications is because they're not in a fixed container where
exactly.
you
Which,
give
but
time
a
for the micro.
river, how would you then treat a river from that point of view? That's
Rivers are
straining,
much easier. Rivers are much easier, actually.
really.
They're just basically, if you get rid of the nitrogen and phosphorus, huh?
But
Which
you're dealing with a moving body of water.
Yeah, but then remember the energy will carry all the way downstream. And the particle size and the weight is very low,
And so
nitrogen.
will that still be measurable, the results?
I can't measure, I can't give you the name of the river here because I may get in trouble here. But we're doing one that's over 40 miles long and we're seeing
Okay.
results here.
Really?
Yeah,
I mean, if you stop at different points along the river,
that's right.
you'll
That's right.
see the difference
Yes.
in. And
There's
so
a reduction.
PFAS, I mean, this is so important. These forever
That's right.
chemicals and the
Exactly.
microplastics is become something of now, many of us have known about this for a long time, but only now is it's coming to the attention of mainstream and mainstream media. Thankfully, late but better than never. And Kiko can really have describe its effect on the microplastics, if you would.
I think it's going to take a little time because the microplastics are very, very strong bonds here. So it's just a matter of working with getting an application in, see what the result is, and then bringing it to a research institute and try to duplicate this in a controlled environment. I think it's a two-step process to really address it here. I'm interested in the first process because I've done it already. I've seen a reduction. But in order to get it past legislation or a permit, then you need to have a bona fide body. Hopefully, one of these states do show up. That's could be whatever state regulatory body that has a very keen interest and says, hey, although it may not be in our guidelines as a permit here, it's worthwhile. Maybe we can put it into a category advanced technologies
Sure, exactly.
as
The
opposed to
point
a
is
chemical
that
induced.
with PFAS and microplastics, you're looking at the same phenomenon, but just stronger bonds, which
That's correct.
takes longer to break them down, disintegrate those bonds, and then hypothetically, you've got your answer. You've got your
That's
solution.
correct. That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And that's a very important point. And it goes back to something you said at the very beginning, Jim, about yin and yang. And any practitioner of Chinese medicine learns that the yin overcomes the yang. The soft overcomes the hard, which we also know from Tai Chi Chuan and Qi Kung. Exactly.
Wipe
Water,
on,
right?
wipe off, wipe on.
Water dissolves rock. And it takes a while. But if you have enough pellets, and in some cases, some extra microbes or enzymes, you will see the results.
That's right. So the beauty of our technology is there are firms that have good technologies, right? The bioenzyme folks here, wood vinegar, a biochar, people who make minerals, conditioners here.
Yep.
Uh, they can actually use our hydrogen pellets, our hydrogen induced pellets, the Kiko pellets, and improve their efficacy here. So we're not working in a vacuum here. We're looking for
Not at all.
alliances as an adjunct, and the adjunct will improve the recipient's business model significantly. Even the companies in the fertilizer business, like people with the urea. I mean, if they're very honest with us, if you put in urea as an example, you're only going to get 25 to 30% absorption. So you're selling at a high price, correct? At a relative high price for 30% absorption. Suppose you can reduce that efficacy, adding in the Kiko, and you've got 99% absorption. Don't you think you'll become more
You mean
profitable because you'll use less
increase
volume?
increase the efficacy? Yeah.
Increase the efficacy. So I've got no issues with some of these companies in the fertilizer side. You may have seen so when I was talking here, but if they look at the hydrogen frequency side through the Kiko pellets here, induced pellets here, they will become much more efficient. They have a useful, they have a need for it. We can put in these fertilizers into sandy loam soils, into the deserts, into the Middle East, instead of dumping all these chemicals to these developing countries here. Let's make their land a little bit more useful because the land is relatively good. However, it's been abused by overpopulation, people dumping waste in it, plastics, you name it. So the soil has been damaged. And there is a need for having very good fertilizers with the hydrogen frequency and let the microbes go to work here. So there are big companies out there that should not be threatened, in other words.
We're talking about greening the desert right now, which is going to be the subject
Oh,
of
that'll be
yet
terrific.
a
Exactly.
next episode. So
That's great.
Jim Osugi, I want to just thank you so much for this good work that you've been doing for so long, just staying with it despite all odds and so much opposition and resistance. But slowly, slowly, the world does change and does get a little wiser in the places we need it to become. So thank you so much. And let's have you on again and continue this.
Well, thank you very
So
much, Mitchell, and thank you very much for the audience that's listened to this. And I hope it was very insightful. If you have any more questions, get back to Mitchell Rabin, and Mitchell and I will work very closely here to answer any of your questions.
absolutely. Well,
Okay.
this has been so informative. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did and realize that we've come full circle in talking about a paradigm shift, which this is. It's an accommodating, balancing system where you don't have to be killing things off chemically and thereby also destroying all of the healthy microbes in a given context, a given body of water, but allowing and using nature by uh, further exciting nature, if you will, by stimulating, activating her own mechanisms through the use of the frequency of hydrogen, which is embedded in the Kiko technology. So, thanks so much for joining us again today. I want you to realize, if you would, that we actually have answers to one of the most essential problems of fresh water on the planet. There's pollution, as Jim was saying, everywhere. Some 55, and I think that's modest, percent of all waterways are polluted to one extent or another. I think it's actually more. And it doesn't have to be, and it's not expensive. We just need to find the will, oftentimes the political will, to get it done. So if you have those contacts, please get in touch with me and let's talk about how to clean up our beautiful water planet. Thanks so much for joining, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.